The laughter wasn't cruel at first. It was casual, careless, the kind that comes from boredom after too many quiet shifts. Inside the police station, officers leaned against desks, scrolling phones, sipping cold coffee, waiting for something, anything, to break the routine. In the corner, a police K-9 sat beside his handler, calm and watchful. The dog didn't move, didn't react, didn't seem to notice the jokes drifting across the room. But while the officers laughed, something unseen was already beginning to unravel. The K-9 had arrived at the station months earlier, transferred from another unit after a restructuring that no one fully understood. He was older than most working dogs, slower in his movements, quieter than expected. He didn't bark unnecessarily. He didn't jump with excitement when new calls came in. To some officers, that silence felt like weakness. They joked that the dog was past his prime, that his best years were behind him. They trusted their experience, their instincts, their weapons. A dog, they believed, was just backup. The handler didn't laugh. Years of working alongside K-9 units had taught him something most officers never learned. Dogs don't waste energy. When they stay still, it's not a sign of laziness. It's focus. But explaining that to a room full of confident professionals was useless. Respect is rarely given to what people don't understand. The night shift rolled in quietly. Rain tapped against the windows. Radios crackled with low-priority calls. The station lights hummed. That was when the K-9 stood up. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. Just a slow rise, ears lifting, body tightening. The handler noticed immediately. The officers didn't. Someone made another joke. Someone laughed again. The dog walked toward the far wall of the station, nose low, breathing measured. He stopped near the evidence lockers and refused to move. The handler followed, heart rate rising. He had seen this posture before, not during training, not during drills. Only in moments when something was very wrong. The officers waved it off. Old buildings creak, pipes rattle, dogs react to smells humans can't track. The handler hesitated, caught between protocol and instinct. He trusted the dog. The others trusted the routine. Then the lights flickered. The K-9 growled. Low, controlled, nothing like aggression. A warning. The handler reached for his radio just as the first explosion tore through the station's lower level. The blast wasn't massive, but it was precise. Enough to shatter glass. Enough to knock officers off their feet. Enough to plunge half the station into darkness. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled the air. Shouts replaced laughter in an instant. The K-9 didn't panic. He lunged toward the handler, pulling him away from the collapsing ceiling just seconds before debris crashed down. Another blast followed, closer this time. The station wasn't under random attack. It was targeted. The dog ran, not away. Forward. Through smoke, broken lights, and chaos, the K-9 sprinted toward the back corridors of the station, the areas rarely used, the spaces everyone ignored. The handler followed without question. Around them, officers scrambled, trying to understand what was happening, who was attacking, and where the danger was coming from. The K-9 stopped at a secured door near the evidence wing. He clawed at it, barking urgently now. The handler forced it open, weapon raised, senses overloaded. Inside, they found it. An improvised explosive device hidden behind shelving, wired to detonate within minutes. Another one deeper inside, then another. Whoever planned this knew the building, knew the schedules, knew where people gathered during shift changes. The laughter earlier suddenly made sense. The station hadn't been breached by force. It had been studied. The enemy hadn't rushed. They had waited, counting on comfort, routine, and underestimation. The K-9 moved fast, guiding officers from device to device, alerting, stopping, and redirecting. Bomb squads were called in. Evacuations began. Every second mattered. One officer, injured from the first blast, collapsed near a corridor thick with smoke. The K-9 broke from his handler, dragging the officer out before flames reached the ceiling. Another officer froze near an unstable wall. The dog blocked the path, forcing him back moments before the structure gave way. By the time the final device was disarmed, the station was barely standing, but everyone inside was alive. Silence followed, not the calm kind, the heavy kind. The kind that settles when people realize how close they came to never leaving a place they thought was safe. The K-9 sat beside his handler again, chest rising and falling, eyes still scanning. He didn't seek attention, didn't wait for praise. He had done what he was trained to do, what he had always been doing, even when no one noticed. The officers gathered slowly, faces pale, voices low. No one laughed anymore. They looked at the dog differently now. Not as a tool, not as a joke, not as an aging unit waiting for retirement, but as the reason they were still breathing. Investigators later confirmed the attack was planned to coincide with shift overlap, when the station was fullest. If the devices had detonated as intended, the casualty count would have been devastating. The difference between disaster and survival wasn't firepower, it wasn't inexperience, it wasn't authority. It was a K-9 who refused to ignore what everyone else dismissed. That night rewrote the station's culture. Training protocols changed. Respect replaced mockery. Silence was no longer mistaken for weakness, because when everything went wrong, it wasn't the loudest voice that saved them. It was the one who had been watching the entire time.